Welcome back to another episode of the Agents to Owners podcast. I am excited to have this next guest on with me. He was introduced through a mutual acquaintance, and so we have just spent a little time with him, but I'm excited to have him on the show. For 6 years, this guest was a member of the United States Air Force National Guard. He started his insurance career as a producer in 2011. And in February 2020, he decided to start his own scratch agency called LAF Advisors in Melville, New York. Shawn Fitzgerald, welcome to the program.
Brad, thanks for having me on, man. I'm looking forward to chopping it up with you for the next half hour or so.
Yeah, me too. So, just tell us a little bit how you got in, turned on to the insurance industry and bring us up to now.
Yeah, so back in 2010 was the first time that I learned about the insurance industry. There was somebody that married into the family. I met him for the first time. He invited me over to his house. When I got there, I was kind of blown away. Like, hey, he had a boat docked in his backyard on the canal. He had a nice swimming pool in the backyard, 2 luxury cars in the driveway. And literally within, I would say, no more than 10 minutes of being there, I was like, hey, man, what do you do for a living?
Yeah.
And he tells me insurance. And I was like, oh, are you hiring? and it was just me being more curious than anything.
Yeah.
But, he kind of explained to me that, hey, insurance isn't just, home and auto insurance. You can find your own niche with contractors or whatever the case is and sit down with business owners, and you're not just behind a computer all day. So once he kind of explained the benefits to me and like the residual income, I mean, I was hooked. I remember leaving his house, and he told me, he's like, about getting the job. He's like, well, yeah, you got to get your license. It's a process. But once you get your license, give me a call. So I literally went home. I remember Googling how to get, your PNC insurance license. At the time, I had to like go to a in-person class to get the license.
Yeah.
So I did all that. Took a couple months. Called him back. I was like, hey, I got my license. Are you still hiring? And I ended up getting the job, and I worked there for almost 10 years. And I was a producer. It was a nationwide agency.
Okay.
The beauty of it was they were quasi-independent. So, the way we won't go into the contract stipulations, but the way it was is we have to go to nationwide first. But if it didn't fit, their perfect little mold, we were able to, check with other carriers that we had. So I kind of got to see the best of both worlds, kind of like what it was like on the captive side and the indie side, if that makes sense. So started personal lines. I did that for 2 years. And then after personal, I started to get into small commercial. And then that grew into, I wouldn't call it, I guess we can consider it middle market, right? I guess every company has a different definition of what that is exactly. But I would say mainly worked on accounts between like 10 and 100,000 in premium, roughly.
Wow.
Yeah. And then after the 10-year mark, I started thinking about having a family. I wanted to leave a legacy for my family. And then I just kind of started writing some numbers down and reverse engineering that and how I would hit those goals. And for me, the way I saw that happening was by owning my own agency or owning my book of business, and it wasn't a possibility where I was. So I decided to leave, and, it was a tough decision because, I had 10 years of, speaking of residual income, of renewals built up. So I went out, started completely zero, no carriers, no customers. I didn't get to take a book of business or anything with me. So I started from zero, and that would happen to be 2 weeks before COVID started. But it worked out great, and I couldn't be any happier.
How long would you say that you considered, started thinking about maybe I should start my own to when you actually made the leap?
Yeah, so I definitely could have done a better job of communicating what I wanted earlier. That's for sure. So I'm not putting a blame on anybody, except myself. But it was definitely a thought I had in my mind. But it was a very big decision. So it's something I sat on for, I have to say, at least over a year. I kind of just sat on it and was figuring out if it made sense to do or not. I had to talk about it with my wife. That wasn't an easy decision either. So,
what was her thoughts? Because, this is obviously, a, kind of a team decision, and I can see that going, either way. I'm making X and bringing home X to the, family income to I'm looking and I have this grand idea. And by the way, I'll be bringing
Yeah.
home zero.
Yeah. The short answer is my wife thought I was nuts. But once I painted out the picture a little bit and, we had a long discussion about it, figured out how, planning out, hey, how are we going to afford this type of thing?
Yeah.
We made it work. And now she sees the bigger picture,
Yeah. So let's, and you mentioned you started February 2020.
Yeah.
The whole world stopped, specifically in New York.
Mhm.
Basically this second, third week in March. So
Yeah.
6 weeks, maybe 5, 6 weeks into your new business. How did you get by during that period? Because
Yeah. Well, I mean, it
you had a
was.
very specific, you had a very specific target in mind, correct?
Yeah. So luckily, and again, this is something I bring up all the time when I speak about the insurance industry, is like, I think it's important not to have all your eggs in one basket. And I
Yeah.
mean, this is the perfect reason why. Like, so I always wrote personal lines, even when I started writing larger commercial.
Yeah.
I always wrote, my niches in commercial were contractors and and hospitality sector. So as you can imagine, and the hospitality sector was a larger portion of
Yeah.
my commercial niche. So as you can imagine, that was basically just when I opened up and tried to get direct appointments with some of the carriers that write, mainly hospitality, I just basically just got shot down. They're
Yeah.
like, no, but you can access this through a wholesaler. I was like, great, you know.
Yeah.
But I was able to get a couple of commercial appointments, for contractors, which I was able to get a contract with Liberty Mutual, which was great.
Oh,
They've been a great partner in my agency, and they'll write some brick and mortar stuff too on top of
yeah.
construction. So that was able to keep me afloat. And I wrote a lot of personal lines during that time. A lot of people were stuck at home. I had some relationships with mortgage
Yeah.
lenders, so I was able to get a couple of direct appointments on the personal side, which was super helpful. And that honestly helped me keep afloat early on.
I think we were asked that question a lot during COVID. How are you guys doing? Are you getting by? And I
Yeah.
think we were extremely fortunate in that really the housing market just continued on and was
Yeah.
very strong. So for us or anybody that worked that market, we were not affected.
No. And if you
We
had, yeah. And if you had, sorry to cut you off, but if
Yeah,
you
no.
had a couple of good mortgage lenders
Yeah.
who were active and wrote a lot of business, I mean, during that time, the interest rates were, around 2%.
Yeah.
Everyone was refinancing.
Right.
So at that point, I was just getting leads left and right on the homeowner side. And, I wrote some more monoline home than I wanted to,
Of
but
course.
hey, at least revenue was coming in the door and I was able to stay afloat for it. So
Yeah.
it was a blessing and a curse at the same time.
Going back to when you decided to start your own agency, what was your strategy in terms of getting contracts? Did you maybe look towards a cluster or an aggregator, or did you
Mhm.
just want to truly be independent and get your direct appointments?
Yeah, so I definitely wanted to truly be independent, but I didn't just shun the idea of an aggregator or cluster right away. I mean, I did some research, called a couple places, and they want an entry fee, an exit fee, a
Yeah.
monthly fee. You know, your company name's not even going to be on the policy. I was like, all right, let me reconsider this. So
Yeah.
I had a mentor at the time when I opened. I still use him now. He's a great guy, Dr. Billy Williams, and he told
Yeah.
me, "Hey, Shawn, pick 2 to 3 niches, that you believe you're an expert in, and then pick 2 to 3 carriers per niche."
Yeah.
And did I get 2 to 3 carriers per niche? No. Did I get 1 or 2? Yes. And that was able to, keep me afloat. One mistake I didn't want to make with this agency is having too many carriers and too many wholesalers to work with. Like
Yeah.
I'd rather have less than more, if that makes sense, because I want to build those stronger relationships. And I see the benefit in that. So that's something I've tried to do. So now I think I want to say I have I probably only have a couple of commercial appointments and a couple of personal lines appointments. And I have my 2 wholesalers that, are perfect for my niches. And that's all I need as of now, until I start growing a little bit larger.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you have plans of trying to expand, adding a company on here or there? Because two or three it's a good number, but I personally think it would be nice to have a few more, because
Yeah, we have a couple of backups. We have some
yeah,
insure tech carriers and things like that too that we have on the back end that don't have any minimum requirements and things like that. But I mean, like strong direct appointments. That's more what I was referring to. But yeah, definitely have plans to grow. It's interesting the way I heard you talk with Steven on the last episode, and the way our agencies are set up are kind of similar. So I have an office space. I almost never go to it. And, I'll be completely upfront with you. I pay $150 a month for my office space.
beautiful.
Yeah. And I have a conference room. So if carriers want to meet with me,
Yeah,
I block out the conference room. It's a beautiful conference room. And we meet there, or we meet for lunch. And none of my customers come into the office. If a larger commercial client wants to meet, for the most part, I go to their office. So
yeah,
listen, at this point, I don't need an office space. And I took the money that I would be putting into the office space and put that more into my technology. So that was kind of my thought process behind it. And, we'll see later on. I probably will need some sort of office space once I start building more of a team. But for now, it's what works and what keeps me alive,
yeah. So let's touch on that. You put money into technology.
Mhm.
What kind of technology are you utilizing right now?
So yeah, I use AMS 360
Okay.
for my AMS. I
Yeah.
use Agency Zoom for my
Okay.
CRM. They're one and the same. Yeah, AMS bought Agency
Yeah.
Zoom. Vertifor bought Agency Zoom, so they obviously integrate quite well. I use Ring Central for my phone system, which again all integrates. Use ePay Policy, which integrates
Oh, okay.
DocuSign, which integrates. So that was back to Dr. Billy Williams. That was one thing he told me, because when you start looking at the prices of some of these management systems, it's insane.
Yeah.
Especially when you start adding users and things like that. So AMS was definitely a high price point.
Mhm.
But now, as I added a VA and I'm looking to add more people, paying a little bit more upfront, I think, is going to be okay in the long run. But what Dr. Billy Williams told me is like, hey, whatever management system you have, start with that, and then make sure all the technology you have is going to integrate with that system specifically. So that knocked out a lot of different companies for me. I was just like, okay, Agency Zoom, no brainer. They have the service center and all these other
Yeah.
great aspects of it, which are awesome. The DocuSign, which I used at my previous agency, AMS I used at my previous agency. So it made it simple. But I would say those are my main tools. I use for commercial too. I use a company called Mineral,
Okay.
and it's like a HR platform.
Oh,
Again, a little pricey, but if you're going after that mid-sized commercial, it's a great value add.
okay.
It makes me be able to compete with the bigger agencies around. So I would say that's my core technology. I know I
Yeah.
gave you a lot there. I get a little
No,
excited talking about technology.
no, that's great. How quickly did you add this technology? Were you able to add it all at once, or did you?
Super, super quick, super quick.
Yeah.
I honestly probably, I want to say within 2 weeks, I was, not the CRM,
Yeah.
Agency Zoom, I think took me, it's kind of embarrassed to say it. At my last agency, we had AMS 360, but we only got that a couple of years ago. There was no CRM. So when I
Yeah.
opened this agency, I get my AMS 360, and I'm talking to Billy, and he's like, yeah, so who do you use for your CRM? I'm like, AMS 360. He's like, no, CRM something separate. I'm like, what's a CRM? and then he
Yeah.
kind of
Right.
explained to me, and I just went down all the wormholes learning about it. But yeah, I know we just completely got sidetracked there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, basically, I would say about 2 weeks. It took me to get the AMS 360 set up, and then I just had to start bringing in revenue. So I got the few personal lines carriers I got direct. They set me up real fast, so that was really beneficial. And it gave me a great jump start, because without that, I would have been hurting for a few months. That's for sure.
Yeah. How quick do you recall how soon after you got added on your AMS, you added on the CRM? Was that in the first
Yeah, the
year?
CRM. No, the CRM took me, just because I didn't do it right away. The
Yeah.
CRM, I want to say, was like 3 or 4 months later.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's still pretty
No.
soon. I mean, into
Yeah, and it was
your
a learning curve. It was a big learning curve. When I first started, I started seeing like the shiny object
yeah,
syndrome that everyone talks about. And I was like, man, I gotta put this to the side for now. I just gotta write policies and bring in revenue. And then I'll
yeah.
worry about adding the CRM a little bit later on. But was that the right decision? I don't know, but it worked,
Of course it was. I mean, you can't. You start out brand new. You have zero revenue. You just can't add on everything that you want to.
Exactly.
Um,
So
what kind of marketing are you doing right now? How are you generating leads?
so a few different ways. So I do kind of still take the old school approach of in-person networking. So I'm a part of a local BNI group here on Long Island, which it's a larger group too. We have about, I want to say we have like 26 or 27 members in it.
Okay.
And within that group, we have the real estate attorney, the mortgage lender. I receive a lot of referrals from the group. And I get probably a little bit more personalized stuff than I want from it, but that's fine. I'm not in the space where I could be picky right now. So,
Yeah.
but every once in a blue moon, you trip over the commercial stuff, and it's nice. So BNI is one of them for sure. Just old fashioned cold calling commercial
Yeah.
accounts.
Nice.
I use Insurance X states. So
Okay.
in New York specific, I don't know how it is in your state, Brad, but in New York, with Insurance X states, I can pull a list of every business's name with all the owners' names, with their phone number, address, which workers' comp carrier they're with, and when their renewal date is. And then
Okay.
now it's a little bit more of a warmer conversation when I call and say, hey, did you know you're paying 20% more compared to your peer group for your workers' comp insurance? Hey, I also see your renewals up in, the next 3 months, that type of conversation. So yeah,
Okay.
those are two places. You were going to say something. Sorry.
That's huge. Yeah. Now, does that give you
Yeah.
the mod factor by chance?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
So in New York, they use the LCM. So it's like
Okay.
a loss cost multiplier, and it's a rate that's public knowledge. So I'm making it up. Let's say somebody says they're with AmTrust of Kansas. Sorry, AmTrust, I'm not picking on you. But let's say their LCM is 1.4, right? And I have the Hartford Accident and Fire, and it's 1.0. I know my rate is substantially going to be less right off the bat without even having to do anything
Yeah.
else. So that LCM it's not like the mod, but it's a quick and easy way to differentiate the rate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that's huge. And I don't know, I was recently turned on to a program called or a website called ncci.com, and it's not in every state, and it may not be in New York if it's different, but through there in so many states you can pull a list of, if you wanted to go after plumbers, you can pull a list of plumbers and you can see their mod factor, and so you know right away that they have a certain amount of premium with their account. So it's an
Yes,
outstanding marketing strategy. I got excited
100%.
about it, got signed up with the site, and then found out Minnesota doesn't subscribe to them, so it doesn't do me any good. So that's unfortunate.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of there's a lot of cool little tactics like that. I mean, you could even just go the old school route and do, what used to be Sales Genie. I think it's like Data X something now. I forgot the exact name of it, but just pick a prospecting list, plumbers in New York with 5 or more employees with, a million less in sales, whatever you want to break it down to, and just start cold calling that way. And then what I did in the beginning too, I'm not doing it now, but what I did was I purchased home insurance leads as well. Some people would say you're nuts, but what I was able to do with my CRM was, set up an automation. So if somebody filled out the form to get a lead, they would automatically get hit with an email and a text acknowledging that we received the lead, we're working on it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
We would call them. That's one of the biggest things, is like calling them as soon as the lead comes in.
Yep.
And I was obviously able to do that at the time because that was brand new. So yeah, I was able to close about almost 10% roughly,
Wow.
9-10% of all the leads that came in. And that generated a nice revenue right off the bat. And I did that with commercial leads too. So that was super helpful.
What company are you getting the leads from?
So we used insurance quotes for the commercial leads. And
Okay.
then we used Quote Wizard for the
Okay.
homeowners quotes. Yeah.
You're still using those?
So I use insurance quotes for the commercial still, but I turned off the home leads, because the home leads, the commercial ones too, but the home leads even more so. The second you get the email, you have to call them right away. Otherwise,
Yeah.
they're going to get hit with 10 calls from other people. So it makes it tough. But that's what's good about having that automation. So
Yep.
they get the instant text and email, and your call a few seconds after.
So you were able to, I'm curious about this because I literally just signed on. We just started yesterday with
Mhm.
Hometown Quotes
Oh yeah, I've
for
used them before.
for what are supposed to be exclusive homeowners leads. Now we haven't
Mm,
gotten any yet, but
okay.
that is one thing I have automation set up for my Google leads that come in, where
Nice.
they receive an automated text and email. And but I was curious, and I have an appointment set up with a guy this week to try and set up this automation for the leads that come in, so they go directly into our texting software. So you said you were able to do that, right? Where
Yep.
went right into your agency Zoom.
Yeah. So the lead, so basically the lead would come in. The lead automatically gets inputted into my agency Zoom. So I didn't have to do anything. Just the email comes in, and there's a way your
Zapier.
CRM, yeah, there's a way your CRM is able to just automatically, when you get the email with the lead, it just automatically pushes it into your CRM, which triggers the first step of
Right.
that new lead coming in,
Okay.
which would be a text and an email.
Yeah.
And then, what we do is I call. I mean, it was a long, drawn out process. Like, I call, they don't answer, I leave a voicemail, I send an email with an estimated proposal, and then they get hit with, I want to say, like 4 or 5 more automated emails, saying, hey, just wanted to check in, make sure you received our quote from yesterday. If you have any questions, you can call this number, and so on and so on. And like I said, 10%, it doesn't seem like a lot, but to me, that's a good ratio on those types of leads.
It is a good number.
Yeah.
And I crunched the numbers. I haven't tried internet leads in about 6 years.
Mhm.
And, it seems like all the companies are the same. They offer you the moon, and you tend to,
Yeah.
get crap. But I figured I'd give it a shot. So I'm eager to see how it goes. You know, being that you had almost 10 years experience in the insurance business as a producer.
Yeah.
And I think with any job, we're able to look at something and say, well, I can do that. That's easy. This isn't going to be too hard.
Yeah.
Now that you've been in it for nearly 3 years, what have you found to be your biggest challenges of being a business owner and being an insurance agency owner?
Yeah, I mean, I guess as an agency owner, you're just pulled in so many different directions,
Yeah.
right? Like, as a producer, my setup was slightly different as a producer. Like, I did sales and I serviced all my accounts, which was, a blessing in disguise, because now I know how to do all that stuff. But yeah, you're just pulled in so many different directions. But the technology was a big learning curve for me, and I didn't realize how much time it would take to learn all that stuff. Like, even my AMS 360, I am not utilizing it to 100% of its capacity,
No.
let alone probably 50% of its capacity. So it's a big learning curve, and all the trainings and stuff you have to do for it, learning how to use the CRM. You mentioned Zapier before, learning how to use Zapier, making sure everything connects the right way. So I think that's just being pulled in a lot of different directions was the biggest challenge for sure, mainly on the technology side. Funny enough, what people told me prior to opening this agency was, oh, you're crazy, you're not going to be able to get any appointments. To me, that wasn't the hardest part. To me, was the learning curve and the technology. And it sounds silly. I was a hard worker when I was a producer. I did 10, 12-hour days, all that fun stuff. But as an agency owner, you, you know, a 12-hour day is just common. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially when you're a scratch agency just starting out. So, you know, it's common to work 12 plus hours every day, and then maybe even extra on the weekends. So, no, I would say just being pulled in a bunch of different directions and a little bit more harder work than I anticipated. But honestly, I love the process of it, and I love the process of trying to build the agency and build a brand and build something that can eventually be a legacy for my name. So that keeps me excited and motivated.
That's it. That's it right there. I mean, for most
Yeah.
business owners, even Jeff Bezos at Amazon says, that's what he is driven by. It's not making money. Of course, he's got all the money in the world, but it's building something.
Yeah.
And improving on it and sharpening it. Yeah. That's what keeps you driven and keeps you going. And that's what makes those 12-hour days. And I think that's what you're doing it. You're creating something on your own. So when you're working a 12-hour day, it's improving your business, improving your business, your baby.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little bit easier. You don't want to do it forever. But
yeah,
yeah.
Eventually you got to make it to a kid's soccer game and stuff like that, But,
yeah. Well, hopefully you can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we're
You
working
gotta
on
wait.
that.
You gotta wait before she starts playing soccer, though. I think.
Yeah. I got some time. But yeah, just setting up. Now it's to the point, we're just setting up to one day be able to take a little, extra time. And I haven't figured out. I'm something I'm still working on now. I'm actually working with Kerry Wallace on it now. Really figuring out a long-term plan. And we were talking about this a little earlier in the episode, but really hunkering down. I don't know if you ever heard of like the EOS platform.
Yeah, I use pieces of it.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I did, pieces of it, because it's just myself and a VA, right? So, I kind of they have like a 3-year picture, 5-year picture, 10-year picture. As a scratch agency, the second year in business, that just changes on a weekly basis. But to have it written down and to have like an actual plan and, goals of where I want to be and stuff is something important to have. So, when is the right time to hire the first CSR? When is the right time to hire that first producer? So that's something I hope Kerry can help me out with a little bit.
Well, you've mentioned something. You've mentioned 2 people here, which are 2 of the tops in our industry, with Dr. Billy Williams and Kerry Wallace. I've recently become associated with Kerry Wallace myself, and just it's been a huge help to me, and especially for somebody like you in your position in terms of that planning and going forward. You're going to be structured so much better because you've established these relationships.
Yeah. And I would say, it was funny. I was thinking about this the other day. Like, I think a big mistake that I made in the past was not investing in myself enough. So, I mentioned these names, these people aren't free, and they're well worth the money. So I feel like in the past, I should have probably put a little bit more money into, gaining that knowledge, but, I'm doing it now. So I guess that's all that matters.
Yeah, you're doing it now. Yeah, no, it's definitely not too late. I mean, I'm doing it now, and I've been in it for 20 some years.
Yeah.
So personal development, business development's huge. You mentioned your VA, which I think is unique for somebody in your position to even have any type of staff at this point. What kinds of things are you having your VA do for you?
So she's a little bit of a generalist right now, which, some people might say that's not the best thing to do, but I have her doing some basic marketing stuff. What I mean by that is, so Liberty Mutual the other day, they gave me I don't know, I forgot the exact number, 500 free commercial leads through that Sales Genie program I was telling you about. I think they're Data X now. I forget the exact name, but whatever. That's not the point. So they gave me a bunch of free leads. I sent the list to my VA and said, hey, can you scrub this list?
Nice.
And go to that website I was telling you about and write down the LCMs and the carriers and the expiration dates for each one of those companies. She scrubbed the list and sent it back to me, and now I'm able to call that list. So she does little things like that, running my upcoming renewal list through my AMS platform. She does, some sample certificates of insurance. And a big one for me, which is it's honestly it's very annoying. I hope one day the carriers will all get on Ivans and download, but I have a couple of carriers that don't download, so I have to have her. We get all these homeowners renewals. I have to send them to her and say, hey, renew this in AMS. Make sure the policy
Yeah.
documents are in there. Make sure the file's up
Yeah.
to date. And that keeps our system clean, so to speak. And
Yeah.
that's a lot more work than it sounds like. So I would say
I
those are
know.
like them. Those are really like the main tasks that I give her.
It's huge. It's a
Yeah,
huge
yeah,
help. Those are the stuff that otherwise wouldn't get done, or
mhm,
you'd be doing it yourself at midnight, you
100%.
know.
Oh, and a big one's the cancellation process. I forgot. I have her do all the cancel. So I made a Loom video. Hey, this is how you pull the cancellation report from Shelter Point, Allstate, blah 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 blah. She pulls all the cancellation reports, then does what our cancellation process is, and documents that all in AMS, which again makes my life a lot more easier.
Yeah, that's what she's there for. That's
Mhm.
I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Uh, where do you see yourself? Where would you like to be in, say, 3 years from now? The agency. Hard to
Yeah. So
envision
that
sometimes.
yeah, it's really tough because kind of what we were saying before, right? Like you can have a plan, but when you're so new to the business, it's just evolving on a
Yeah,
I would say monthly basis, right? We could say weekly probably, but really on a monthly basis. So that's something I'm really working on now to get a clear picture of. But I would like to start building out a team. I'm gonna need my next 2 hires. I don't know which order that's gonna come in, but I'm gonna need an account manager. I'm gonna need a producer. So those are 2 things I'm trying to work on and figure out. Um, I would like, a couple other carriers. And then from a technology standpoint, it's funny. I started reading Alex Hermosi's book. I don't know if you're familiar with his information, but he has a book called The $100 Million Offer. And in the
okay.
book, I'm not finished with it yet, but in the book, he talks about really bringing value. When you're in such a competitive space, how are you going to separate yourself, right?
Yeah,
Most people would say, oh, I can have a cheaper price. Great, but do you really want those clients that are just leaving for $100, $200? So what can I do to provide extra value? So that's why I added mineral. Again, a little pricey, but it gives me that extra value when I'm going after commercial business. And then something I want to add, I'm not going to do it yet, but my AMS platform has like a portal, a client. Let's call it a client portal, where they can actually go in, generate their own certificates of insurance, get their own auto ID cards. We can almost call it like an agency app, but it's integrated directly with my system. It's super clean, and it would make everything a little bit more efficient for the customer, and it gives them another option. They want to
yeah.
get a certificate of insurance on the weekend, they can just kind of do it themselves. So that's
Well, and if you
something
can,
I'm probably going to add.
and if you can train your customers that this is the portal that they can go to. Oh, here it is. It's super simple. That just takes
Yeah,
something off your plate.
yeah, and it's interesting. I think once I started this agency, I started realizing like some of the normal standards have changed, right? And what I mean by that is, some of the benchmarks I heard from, just talking to other agents and mentors and whatnot is that, once you're around $1 million in premium, let's call it 750,000 in premium.
Mhm.
And if you're commercial heavy, you're really going to need like a customer service. That's around the time you should start looking at, customer service reps or account managers, things like that. Um, and I'm a little more than double that now, and I just have a VA. But I think the only reason that's possible is because I put more money towards my technology.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
still not where I want it to be, but I think that's helped me push off having to add on, a $60,000,
Yeah.
$75,000 employee.
Yeah. And when you're talking earlier, it just reminded me something about with the benefit of having a Carrie Wallace
Yeah.
is to have those benchmarks of what should I be spending on technology? Where
Oh
should an
my
agency
God.
my
Yeah.
size be here? What can I afford an
Yeah.
account manager? Without a mentor like that or a consultant or somebody in your life, you have no idea.
No.
you know.
And what is really, it's not crazy, but what's awesome about this industry is a lot of the information is free if
Yeah.
you know where to look for it.
Yeah.
If, the people listening to this, if you haven't heard the episode, Carrie Wallace was on the Insurance Guys podcast. This was before I was working with Carrie. She goes through line by line what you should be spending on,
Yeah.
selling expenses, payroll, occupancy, all that type of stuff. And I remember I must have replayed that section
Yeah.
of the episode 100 times to write down all the information. So it's crazy, but a lot of the stuff is free.
Yeah. And I think this is becoming a Carrie Wallace commercial is what's going on. She also did a really good, which I she did like a 6-piece episode on David Carruthers' podcast, which was just fantastic. And really, I think for any agency owner of any size would benefit from that, from information, because
100%.
accounting is not going to be any of our specialties.
Yeah.
Or most of ours. So to get a little knowledge is huge. So yeah, to your point, there are so many free resources that you go out there and look and you could find it. It's so helpful.
Yeah, free resources. And then on top of that too, you have, we keep talking about all these other names in the space, but everyone has what they're really good at, right? David Carruthers, trying to find value for large commercial. I mean, I'm not sure there's really anyone better.
Yeah.
Carrie Wallace for agency planning, Billy Williams for, setting up your processes and procedures. I mean, everyone really has like their little niche. And all those things are super important when you're running your agency. So
yeah,
all three of those people have been great points of contact for me for sure.
Yeah. Hey, I'm going to go ahead and get this thing wrapped up. I want to be respectful of your time, but man, I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks so much for being with me today, and thank you all for listening. And we will see you next time. See you, Shawn.
Take care.